there's a question that maybe you could open up a little bit. This idea of owning it, I wonder if you could break that down a little bit more. I say that because I know that there's a kind of spiritual axiom out there that says accept what is. And I also see people get very frustrated with that because they say, okay, great, I accept it. Ah! but it isn't necessarily always a medicine for them, for some people. What is owning it? What skills are required to own it? How does someone go through the process of owning it and actually having that take hold?
The owning it, as I said before, is finding out where is the emotion. And we had the emotions before down here in the quadrants. Mm-hmm. If I'm in anger and resentment, it'll tell me there's something, I'm sense of meaninglessness and fear happening in my life. So owning it is saying, what is it in my life which is meaningless? How did I get there? And being okay with those answers. Celestine Prophecy, again, a wonderful little book by James Redfield, helps us do that. I think it's the third insight, the greater now, helps us own how we got to where we are. And I know when I did the workshop around that, gosh, that's many years ago, decades ago, I was living in South Africa at the time, a Lifeline counselor, she was taking us through the class. I got stuck on that third insight, to the greater now. I've been brought up in a British upbringing from the colonial Britain, where you do not talk back to your elders. Little boys should be seen and not heard. And I was angry with my parents. And it was not okay to be angry with them. Remember down here was anger in that quadrant?
Yeah.
I was angry with them because I had this completely meaningless existence in my life. I was terrified of coming out as a gay man. So I was conforming, complying to the heterosexual world, it didn't work. So I ended up in adulthood here. And I had to sit and go through this process. And I actually held up a class for about 4 weeks because I just couldn't process this. It was my crisis I had to go through. It's okay to love my parents, but acknowledge they did the best they can do, but some of what they did do is not okay. And I need to say, and I remember having a meal with them, and we went out a while later after I'd been through my whole growth process. And I said, Mum and Dad, they've been on this journey with me a little bit. I said, I believe that we choose our parents to incarnate through and to be born through. I said, and they was eating their meal. And I said, well, I'd like to thank the two of you very, very much for being such shitty parents. And they looked at each other and thought, what the heck just happened there? Was that a compliment or a side swipe? I said, no, because I chose you impeccably so I could do my work, my inner work, my own inner karmic work. And that had to do with learning to love myself. So I chose them, and I know I was not an easy child for them. So I have to thank them for being my parents, putting up with me. And I had to learn to love myself. So I had to learn to go through that. So that's when I talk about owning it.
Yeah.
Own, what is it? And often I'm not sure how one does it on one's own. It's where likes of you and me come into it to help people support and someone they can feel comfortable with and trust. We won't judge them for where they are, because judgment sits down here. And so you need to find someone sitting up there in a place of love to help bring people from this line of the control, axis of control, from control to freedom, that inner peace. So that's the best I can really say is how we own it, is identifying it, then addressing it. If we can't address it on our own, we find someone we can work with to address it, to find that freedom.
I'm thinking through, when I have clients that have a particularly strong story, especially if it's a victim story, what I have to do with them is to review the story and the kind of meanings that got created in the experience, like what they decided about life,
right,
what they decided about people, what defining beliefs got anchored in that moment. And for me, the body is such a great ally, because sometimes that was all decided by a 6-year-old, that was decided by a 4-year-old, and it's anchored so deep that it's not even visible anymore, or it's not detectable. And when a person can kind of go back to that belief and feel into it, there's all kinds of wonderful thematic information there for a person. They get feedback in their body. Their body is like the great truth detector in that department. So that's one way. You know, some of those beliefs, like for me, owning it is maybe getting to those beliefs and actually finding out what you created at that moment in time, what you created through those experiences, what you created about the meaning of life, and owning being a creator itself, like actually remembering that you created it, you know, remembering the meaning that you encoded it all with.
But you come up with an important point here, and that's the blind spot or the hidden area.
Yeah.
And we all have our blind spots. We often create blind spots to hide from the world. And
it's an adaptive response. You know, it's something that sometimes you have to edit out parts of reality to be functional in the other parts.
Yeah, the thing is, though, with the blind spot is others can see it and we can't.
Yeah.
And so how do we find a place, and there's a whole workaround, it's called the Johari window, Johari, developed by these two men called Joe and Harry, hence the Johari window. And you know, your audience can Google that, Johari window. It's a great body of work saying, how do we navigate into that blind area with others? What do we hide from others? And what do we reveal to others? And what can others see about us, which we can't see about ourselves? And what can we see about them, which they can't see about themselves? And when we get to that place, what they call trust and respect, the two together, and that I call that place of love, trust and respect, is when growth takes place, mutual growth. That's when we can explore and the unexpected comes through, where the unknown becomes the known. Okay, so how do you create that space of trust? And how is it okay to say to someone, you know what, you're picking your nose has been really quite annoying. You say, do I really do that? So you actually do that. Oh, okay. Yeah. and how I do that, by the way, is make it about myself. Saying, I really get annoyed when you do that. It's not about you, but it's about me, and I need to process that, and I need to overcome your annoyance somehow. And if it's so bad, I may have to leave the room, but that's my choice. Again, back to free will, back to personal responsibility, back to ownership, not projecting it onto you. But there are times, of course, when it's appropriate to say to someone that's antisocial behavior within a society you've grown up in, that's not okay. It's just to help protect them as well. That's also okay. That's where it comes to the stalker. Sweet, patient, cunning, ruthless. And the impeccable stalker will know exactly what to do in the moment. So while someone's offending me, I cannot be an impeccable stalker. Okay.
I found that in my early coaching career, I've had to slide along that spectrum. On one end being helping a person find their own truth, and then the other end of the spectrum being bluntly honest about what probably everyone else can see that they're not seeing. And it's definitely a range in there, and every situation kind of calls for its own place. I think I got a little stuck on the letting everyone find their own way to the truth, and I found there were some clients that I think I could have served better if I just say, this is not okay. You know?
So a little secret, though, is that when you do this work and the veil between the two worlds gets thinner and thinner, one can then be trained, or comes naturally, just depends on the person. I have to be trained to then see into the other worlds, to see then guides, teachers, healers, departed loved ones in spirit. And so my little secret here is I actually don't do the work. I let them do the work, the ones in spirit. It lets me off the hook. So it's much easier saying, okay, so what do you want me to tell this person now? What would you like me to say? And it's just so much easier. And those in spirit will always transmit their message from a place of love. I'm not saying the message is always loving. It can be pretty ruthless or cunning, but it'll come from a place of love. So it's that stone coldness of spirit. So when you take the emotion out of it, you can be absolutely in love.